Today is the 51st Infamous Todd Show. So now it's time that I start talking about specific issues in social conversations. I heard for the umpteenth time the past week some derogatory comment aimed at a millennial. And for those of you that are unfamiliar with the term millennial, it's the tag many people use to loosely define people born from 1980 or 81 to either 1997 to 2000. Now, don't worry if you didn't know the dates or the terminology. There isn't a structured institution creating these broad names of groups of people. In fact, the term millennial came from a 1991 book. In today's show, I want to lean less on the terminology and focus on the stereotypes that we place upon these younger people. On today's show, I want you to picture removing every single person from Europe and all the continents of America, Canada, United States, Mexico, Brazil, all the way down South America, Peru. Get rid of every single one of them and replace them one for one with millennials. People born from 1980 to 2000, we'll say. And that is how many millennials. There's 1.3 trillion millennials. That's how many millennials there are on Earth right now. So if I wrote a book and every single American is exactly the same as every single American throughout, not only in the United States, but throughout all of America, we're all the same. And not only are we all the same, but we're all exactly the same as everybody in Europe. That we're exactly the same as the people in Greece, and we're exactly the same as the people in... If I said we were all exactly the same, would you assume that book is fact? No, you wouldn't assume it's fact. Then why do we assume to know millennials? Why do we assume some clever book or stereotype can explain them all? The funny thing is the person that was making the comment about the millennial didn't realize the person he was trying to be snotty by making the comment to wasn't a millennial at all. He was too young to be a millennial. Now, we don't know the phrase the demographers are going to place on the people born after 1999. So many of us assume that the younger person must be a millennial. But in the meantime, those people that were born after 1999, right now they're calling them Generation X to see if that kind of sticks. It's funny that we're calling them Generation X, since that would imply that they'll be the last generation to complete full lives. Sometimes I look at the world and I wonder, perhaps the Aztecs calendar, we may be right. Every person born after the year 2000 watching today's show has a classification by demographers. Experts if you don't know what a demographer is, that is an expert that studies the statistics relating to the changing structure of human population. That's a demographer. They're kind of the people that come up with these names. So let's go through this list. Oh, yes. And we didn't even have such a list till 1998. So coming up with clever names for a group of people is a fairly recent thing. So if you were born before 1925, congratulations on finding my show. I hope when I am at your age, I shall be so alert. Considering at my age, I can barely find the replacement toilet paper rolls in my own home. You are considered the GI, or the greatest generation. John F. Kennedy was the first president to be elected from your generation. You lived and survived the Great Depression. You fought World War II, and you almost single-handedly built the infrastructure to which future generations destroyed. Your term came from a book that Tom Brokaw wrote called The Greatest Generation. Your children became the silent generation. So if you were born from 1925 to 1942 or 1945, you were the silent generation. Now notice at this point, the encompassing years become more fluid because once again, there is no official agency defining these groups and their names and the birth date cycle. It's just whatever seems to click with the demographers. And even they probably don't agree. So therefore, that's why the dates from this point on are more fluid. The silent generation was named by Time magazine because these children were more cautious. They watched their parents struggle through the Depression and wars. The silent generation was not necessarily silent as in quiet. Their generation ushered in rock and roll, 20th century pop, war protests. They stood up to government abuse. But here's something strange. Not a single person in the silent generation became a president of the United States. I can promise you, their parents were whispering all the bad stuff about them that they whisper about millennials. Before the millennials were born, they were talking crap about baby boomers and Generation X. It's just how the world is wired. Which brings you to my generation, the infamous baby boomers. After the war, there was an explosion of children in this country. They couldn't build schools fast enough. People born from 1943 or 1946 all the way to 1964 became known as the baby boomers. Now, baby boomers are the only generation listed by name by the Census Bureau. Here's another secret. Their parents were whispering all the bad stuff about them, and now the baby boomers whisper about people younger than us. Now, if you are like my Michael, and you are a Generation X, that means you were born in 1965 to either 1979 or 1980. It's another generation that was named after a book cover. So far, no Generation X person has become a president of the United States as of the date of this taping of this show, which happens to be, let's see, 3/31/2019 at 9:30 in the morning. As of this moment, no Generation X person has become a president. Each generation believes the next generation is not as smart, loyal, diligent, productive as their own. But Generation X people take it to a different level. Not only do they believe the younger generations fit the stereotypes, but they also believe anyone older than them is suspect. Too funny, I just said this show is taped. Proof that I'm not a millennial. Okay, today I want to combine groups. I'm going to call everyone that could mathematically have a child in the millennial group old school. If you like it or not, if you were born in or before 1980, technically for today's show, you are old school. Now, I'm sure this is going to suck for many of you hoping to grasp onto some remnants of your youth. Okay, now a person born after 1980, I plan for this show to, we'll call them new school. Just like new math, learning the metric system, just because it's right doesn't mean we have to like it. See, now, right now, a person born before 1980 is thinking, what does Todd mean by having to learn the metric system? And now they're telling me that they probably need to Google the term new math. I spent over 2 weeks, 60 hours reading and writing to create today's episode. I needed to track down the most common new school stereotypes, their origin, why they persist, and to justify them by using actual data, which I will eventually place on YouTube, the YouTube version of this product. So, but if you're watching this, it's the reference material is already placed on YouTube. I know hardly any of you watch this on YouTube or on social media, but it is actually there because some of the people that follow the show are hearing impaired, or they want to access the information and supporting data. And so therefore I posted underneath the YouTube video. Or unlike Millennials, which people like me, they don't have the slightest idea how to access the popular podcasts. If anything, the podcast people will see I have a face best used on an audio-only podcast. But I did learn that if I ask Alexa, Siri, or my Google to play the podcast, the Infamous Todd Show, it'll start playing my show. I'm easily entertained. I don't want to listen to my voice, but I think it's cool that the reason my podcast is so popular is from all these easy access venues. Okay, today I want to prove something on today's show. I wanted to prove old school is right, meaning people like me and people like my Michael, that we were right and new school is wrong, meaning the children and their children that have now become adults, or at least into the working and the threshold where they're starting to work. And I have to admit, I ended up with egg all over my face. To reach my conclusions, I read statistical data, not memes, not quotes without actual studies, or even medical, psychological, or behavioral science that was not backed up with actual posted math. Like my teacher, I had this math teacher, his name was Mr. Church, and he would constantly tell me in high school, I don't want just the answer to the question. I need to see the work it took for you to get to that conclusion. Which really sucked because I just bought this new thing called a calculator. Hashtag feeling old. Okay, so many old school people look at poor families, and without knowing their backstory of their lives, they'll say, if you don't have any money, then you shouldn't have so many children. The first stereotype of new school graduates states they don't want children. Well, to start off, they just spent their whole life hearing that if you're not in a secure financial place to raise children, then don't have children. They're being responsible. They're doing exactly what society kept preaching over and over to them as they grew up. I'll tell you this, the exact same amount of the exact same percentage of them want to have children as the previous generations. But they don't want to have it but they want to have these children when it's responsible for them to have children. We taught them that behavior, for better or worse. And for the record, as a child, I came from a poor family. Don't assume to know the details of my life or the situation my mother was placed in. Even poor people raise good children. Even poor people are responsible. Even poor people should be treated with respect. Now that's something the new generation, the new school people understand. Not all people match. Being responsible is also the reason the younger generation isn't marrying until later in life. The median age for the first marriage is now 27 for women and 29 for men. Now that's up 20 for women and 23 for men since 1960. Because they define marriage as being outdated. And they're using the divorce rate of our generation as proof of a failure, of marriage as failure. We're the ones, we cut them down constantly without looking in the mirror and saying, what did I do to create this situation? 2/3 of new school adults believe a person should not have to marry and have children as their number one priority in life. 2/3 of them. On the other half, 55% of old school adults disagree with them. For us in our generation, we're telling them that being married and having children should be their number one priority in life. The marriage rate right now is only 70%. They're not expecting it to go above 70%. For the boomers, it was 90%. Even for the Generation X, it was 82%. And it's 70%. But here's the catch. Only 25% of them, it's estimated, have no intention to get married. Nowhere inside their cycle are they getting married. Marriage today is more prevalent, and the people that are getting married tend to have a higher income and more education. Where in our generation, it was more prevalent in financially scrapped households to get married. Furthermore, unlike older generations where divorce is rampant, millennials are bringing the divorce rate down by 18%, the ones that do get married. Proving once again, when they got married, they're more apt to stay together. They're more apt to be responsible. Being responsible is also the reason 75% of them only drink in moderation. And they have the lowest arrest record for DUI compared to previous generations. Being responsible is the reason they smoke less cigarettes. Being responsible is the reason they commit less crimes. Something awesome considering baby boomers were, and we still are, the leading group of criminals in every category tracked by the U.S. Department of Justice. Being responsible is the reason 66% of them refuse to get a credit card, insisting paying with prepaid cards or debit cards, which are not credit cards, but plastic versions of something us old school people used to call cash. Being responsible is the reason they have fewer sexual partners and are less sexually active. Another misconception states they love to shop and waste money being impractical, yet every statistic proves this to be false. 3/4 of the new generation does not want stuff. They want experiences. They want to do something with the money that occupies time, not space. They are not the primary consumer of things you would fill inside your home. They are not the primary customer of places like Amazon.com. It is why they have no problem living in smaller spaces compared to older generations. Their desire is to do actual activities with the money. They want to travel. They want to do activities with their friends when they're at home. They would rather use the money spent by their parents on useless knickknacks to watch television, play games, or surf the computer. For the first time in history, even the most secluded person now has an entire network of friends, family, classmates, strangers as part of their lives, if only on social media, where before abandoned people were, well, abandoned. They're not spending money. But unlike older generations, when we were at their age, they are saving money. 72% of them are saving for retirement, starting at the age of 22. Something few of the older generation can claim. 75% of the Gen X, the younger members of the old school generation, earn more than baby boomers did when they were the same age. But you know what? Only 36% of them have more wealth than their parents. Why? Because of debt. The highest credit debt, notice I said credit card debt, the highest credit card debt ratio belongs to the Generation X, not the new school generation. In fact, the Generation X hold the largest overall debt, with the average person holding over $30,000 in debt. The younger generation, don't get me wrong, they're still using credit cards. It still outweighs the income that they make, but overall they have the if I don't have money, then I'm not going to buy it attitude. As a whole, Generation X are spending more than they make. It's often why the new school generation is holding off on buying homes, being responsible. But without them building credit through credit cards or being late on the credit cards because of crushing student debt or the cost of housing nowadays and all the other bills, then they get behind on their bills. Now it's harder also for them to buy a house. It's almost impossible for them to qualify for reasonable home loans with minimal down payments after the housing crisis. The housing crisis that I shall point out that our generation created once again. A majority of the new school adults, they want to live in city centers where it is both impractical for them to buy homes due to home pricings in a downtown city, and where starter homes are scarce. Few of them are leaving to head to rural America. The new generation is smarter than we were at their age. This must suck for many of us wanting to believe we are smarter. You may be smarter now, but you were not as smart as them when you were their age. Think about it. If you are my age and you are interested in something, you would have to hike down to the library or a bookstore to find something written about it. Perhaps you were one of the clever kids like me, scanning the stacks of magazines and a microfiche machine because the 12 books available on the bookshelf weren't enough for you. God forbid, while you were looking, something else also intrigued you, something else intrigued you, because now you would be off on a tangent of going in another direction. Now compare this to today's world, where any thought or question can be accessed instantly on your phone with thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of links to information. Sure, it may be biased or wrong, but you know what? So were the articles of our youth. The new generation is the first generation in history to no longer believe that advanced learning comes from their parents or a teacher. With a touch of a finger, millions of pages of information open in their hands. that rewired their brains, behavior, and their approach to problems. In seconds, a host of online videos show them calmly, without judgment, how to do stuff where their parents and teachers failed. If you don't understand the instructions or the directions, they could repeat the video over and over and over again. Or they could go find another video. They could do this without being judged, without somebody having a short temper. The world has now become their teachers. The world has become their parent when their parent became too busy. Unlike humans, these apps, those social media platforms, the search engines, the internet, they're never too busy for the younger generation. On the internet, they have undivided attention, embraced by technology that not only never rests, but constantly challenges them. They have games that play with them, so dad doesn't have to go toss a ball. They have a world, a babysitter that entertains them. Our parents used to use a TV to park us in front of when they wanted to entertain us at night, when I was growing up. These newer, younger adults grew up encompassed by technology we created, that we use to not only pacify them, but to entertain ourselves. We're the generation that fed our children based on television commercials. The new generation takes time to research food, determine the best source, accessing millions of recipes catered to their wants and needs. They actually demand the nutritional value of each portion, discover new recipes instantly with only a click. They read reviews of restaurants and businesses to determine their best option and to share their discoveries to help others in the community as a whole. I did not know if a Big Mac was bad for me. I knew it was not, but I still ate it. But now with the help of guilt, I often changed the food I was going to eat after discovering how the food plans to kill me. I doubt I'm the only person that's ever changed what they were going to eat based on the nutritional guidelines that are now placed around me to protect me. It doesn't mean I'll always eat better, but I'm the first to admit that I pay attention. When I grew up, beer was beer. You had a favorite one, but that knowledge pretty much stopped there. I liked beer, period. Same with coffee. Our food and drinks rarely had a story beyond a commercial or a printed advertisement. I hear people thinking the generation are slackers. Let me be the first person that admits my parents thought my generation were slackers. There is a reason why we make fun of parents saying, when I was a child, we had to blah, 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 blah. My parents' parents thought my mom and dad were slackers, and so on, and so on, and so on. Once a fair paycheck is established, when a millennial believes their company has a high trust culture, meaning a business that trusts their employees, they are 22 times more likely to stay with the company long term. Generation X was only 16 times more likely. And us baby boomers were only 13% times more likely to stay with the company that trusts us. Furthermore, if a company trusts them, the new school generation is a staggering 59 times more likely to endorse their company to their family and friends. So let's get this straight. Each generation believes the generation that follows will destroy America. It is why most white people want to go back to when their age group was in its prime. Few ethnic groups want to go back to find themselves treated better. This isn't political. I'm not saying anyone's a racist. It has nothing to do with other than the fact that I would love to go back in time when a white man like me with any job can afford to be the only person working in the home, a home that I bought on my home, catered by a wife doting on me, and children that think I am Ward Cleaver, while I shine my car listening to whatever they listen to in those. You will not hear this from many younger people because each generation believes, and for good reason, that they are the future. Because like it or not, the new school adults are the future. Just as you were once the future. What defines a slacker to you? I'm not talking about the youth with money. Believe me, every generation in history had those types of people in one form or the other. A slacker in today's world may wear a torn shirt and wrinkled pants and be unshaven, but he is no different than the slacker of my generation that wore an Izod shirt, deck shoes, and answered to the name Biff. If you think the new generation works less than the older generation, every statistic has you wrong. Due to higher cost of living, and the average youth is now making $2,000 less than we made in 1980. They're forced to not only work more hours for less, but 1 out of 4 were not able to use even a single vacation day, a paid vacation day. And you can say, well, then they need to get a better job because low-income jobs were not made to be used for adults. The jobs available are the jobs available. And for the record, what people are you picturing filling in those 58.3 million jobs, low-wage income jobs? Plus, you cannot say they jump from job to job when you understand that most of the jobs are not even livable wages. Are you going to now change your mind and say they should stay with those 58.3 million jobs? See how confusing it is for us? And then you wonder why they're confused? I'm just asking. Because rarely does an answer fit on a bumper sticker. When you see job growth in America, the positions we are filling are mostly low-wage slots. It was this problem 20 years ago. It was this problem 10 years ago. It was this problem last year. It'll continue to be this problem for a few more years because every political party drops the ball because everyone has an idea that is not compatible with the opposing viewpoint. You cannot think because you work 40 to 50 hours a week at a good job, that means the person forced to work 2 30-hour jobs must be a slacker because he served you a hamburger today. 40% of the new generation has non-permanent part-time jobs to pay for their bills, unlike the older generation that barely had to have 2 jobs to make a minimum survival income. 43% of the younger generation now holds multi-gigs, as in more than one job, with most of them also working through mandated breaks, legally mandated breaks. And what is funny is the person that made the comment that inspired today's show was commenting about a young man at McDonald's on his own break using his own time on social media. And you know what's funny is according to a study done by Nielsen and verified by the largest social media platforms, it's not the younger generation spending so much time on the platform, but actually people from 37 to 52 years of age. Everyone thinks the younger generation expects everything handed out to them, but zero studies have been done that prove that point. The opposite true. Only 2% of them are entrepreneurs, which is 5 times less than our generation. The reason these adults demand so much from the employer is because our generation taught them that employees are sacrificial. Pledging blind loyalty to your company will not ensure a job for life. We, the old school, the older generation, train them to think you must get everything now because the moment they are done with you, they will toss you out. They watch the news. They read the news. They consume more news than any earlier generation. I admit, we didn't have 20,000 news venues throwing stuff at us 24 hours a day when I was at their age. I often feel like I'm being waterboarded with all this news crap from everyone, constantly. And now in a divided country coming at me with vengeful anger and hate. This younger group of adults watch factories close. This younger group of adults are still watching factories close. They're watching towns die. This younger group of adults are watching their families. People in their inner circle suffer so employers can make higher dividends for their shareholders. And even larger paychecks for themselves at the expense of American workers by keeping wages artificially low, or worse yet, closing the business to move it to other countries or lost forever to automation. So if you've already prejudged 1.3 trillion people using the stereotypes of these people born since 1999, then nothing I can say today will change your mind. I can almost hear many of you already using the exceptions to the rule to redefine the actual data I'm placing on here with some version of alternative facts. It would be like me reading the side of a package of cigarettes and warns me of the dangers of smoking and pointing out healthy, surviving elderly smokers to say, these people that are living are proof that the facts are wrong and smoking makes you to live a healthy life. I can't change your mind or make you a kinder person, for that falls upon you. Instead, I want you to look at them as a group of individuals and remember, your generation had exceptions to the rules. Filling prisons is not a new school problem. The death penalty is not a new world problem. Every generation has bad people. Every generation has slackers, bigots, incredible artists, soul-wrenching stories, inspiring teachers, and everything in between. Today I'm just asking you to give the new generation the same respect that you once demanded from those mentors that once upon a time guided you. This is the Infamous Todd Show. Until next Monday, goodbye.